Hello! In this video, I would like to introduce you to the main mechanic of speedrunning LEGO games and show some examples of the techniques you can use. There are currently 26 LEGO games where you can use 1P2C, and it is also the only mechanic that applies to all of them, so once you learn it for one game, you will have much easier time starting with 1P2C in other LEGO games. 1P2C stands for One Player, Two Controllers, and it essentially means that one player is controlling two characters at once. It's basically a co-op of your right hand and left hand. However, in LEGO Speedrunning it is considered as a solo run. For this, you need to understand how LEGO games are meant to be played. All of the mentioned 26 LEGO games are designed to be played in co-op mode, and the story and all the levels remain the same as if you were playing it solo. That's a difference from other games like Portal 2 for example, where you have two different storylines, one for solo and one for co-op. 1P2C is considered to be an intended mechanic to play the LEGO games developed by TT, and it is allowed in speedruns in all those games. All the top runners for each game use 1P2C. The learning curve of 1P2C looks something like this. Everyone starts on the left, and just by practicing they get more skilled in it. It can take days, weeks, or even months. It depends how often you practice. If you have already completed speedruns of the game you are learning 1P2C in, you'll probably find out that once you start using 1P2C, you are slower than with only one controller. This will change within a couple of runs or sessions of practice, so don't let this let you down. There are three general styles of 1P2C. If you are playing on a console, probably your only way would be to use two controllers. However, if you are playing on a PC, you can pick between double controllers, controller keyboard, or double keyboard. For the controller, you can use Xbox One, Xbox 360, PS3, PS4, basically any other controller that you are able to connect to your PC and control your game with. For the keyboard, you want to make sure to use a keyboard that allows for pressing multiple buttons close together, otherwise you might come to the problem that you might not be able to do some inputs. For example, my keyboard doesn't allow me to press some buttons on the numeric keyboard when I'm holding both down and right arrow, so this is definitely something you should avoid, but it's not an unsolvable problem. And now, let's show some 1P2C techniques and a list of speedrunners using them. Put both of your controllers on your knees or on a table and stretch your hands over each controller. For your left hand, use your pinky on the left stick for movement and index and middle fingers for buttons. You can even use your thumb for jumping. For your right hand, use your index finger on the left stick for movement and your ring finger and pinky for buttons. For this technique, you need to rotate your arms in a way so you can reach the left stick with your thumb. For each of your hands, use your thumb on the left stick for movement and index and middle fingers for buttons. This is easier to do with PlayStation controllers, as their left stick is closer to the buttons than the one on Xbox controllers. For this technique, you need to change your controller settings and switch the left and the right sticks on both controllers, so you'll use the right stick for movement. Then you squeeze each hand over the controller on the right side, using whichever finger you like for movement and the rest of your fingers for buttons. This is a technique only for the left controller and can be combined with any other right hand grip or keyboard. Place your left hand on the controller in a way that you can use your palm or the base of your fingers for the left stick, and thumb for the buttons. This grip is a little easier with PlayStation controllers, but you can do it with Xbox controllers too. This is a technique only for the right controller and can be combined with any other left hand grip or keyboard. Hold your controller in your right hand as normal and lift it towards your face. Use your chin on the left stick for movement and your thumb for all the buttons. The advantage of this is that you can easily use your index finger for the right trigger or bumper to switch characters or spells. Put one of your controllers on your knee or on the table and hold the other one with your left hand as normal. Use your left hand to support the controller and do movement for P1, while your right thumb does all the actions for P1. Right index finger is used for moving P2 and right pinky is doing all the actions for P2. A very unconventional way to use double controllers is placing one of them on a table and holding the other one in your hands on top of the first one. Then you can use your left pinky or your knuckles on the left hand to move, and similarly use your right pinky or knuckles to do the actions for the bottom controller. And of course, use your thumbs for the top controller. There are many different ways to play on a keyboard, so instead of showing both hands together, let's look at each hand separately. Then you can pick the best fitting left hand and best fitting right hand techniques and combine them together. Most common left hand grip is WASD, where you use those 4 keys for movement and the keys around for actions. Players usually use Q, E or left shift for attack and special, space for jump, and R or F for tap. You can also use any of the numbers for switching characters in free play. Similar to WASD, you use IJKL for the movement and the keys around for all the actions. The disadvantage of this layout is that you can't reach space easily from this position. However, if you decide to use IJKL with your right hand, you can reach space just fine. The natural place to use for your right hand would be the arrow keys. Depending on your keyboard layout, you can choose to have your action keys on the left, right or both sides. You can use right control and shift with your thumb and some of the numeric keys with your pinky. You can also use some of your navigation keys if you can reach them. Using numpad allows you to have a somewhat similar setup as your left hand on WASD. Use numeric 8456 for movement and the keys around for your actions. Numeric 0 can act the same way as space for WASD, and if the layout of your keyboard allows it, you can even use some of the navigation keys. Double keyboard isn't used that often, but it can be seen a lot in LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga, where currently 5 players out of the top 15 in any percent use double keyboard. That is because TCS is a very keyboard friendly game, where often your characters do the same movement. This technique isn't something I'd really recommend, however it can work in some categories where you either only move your characters or use your characters separately. You use your right hand for P1 movement on arrow keys and your left hand on ASD space for P1 actions. Then you use your left hand on TFGH for P2 movement and left alt for jump, and your right hand on numeric keyboard for P2 actions. Yes, you heard me right. For a controller keyboard method, it's probably best to pick the best fitting controller setup for one hand and the best fitting keyboard setup for your other hand. I'd suggest using a controller for P1 and keyboard for P2, but that's up to your preference. Most controller keyboard players use their right hand for P1 and their left hand for P2. Another way is to use your left hand for P1 and right hand for P2. This is more about what feels more comfortable and natural for you. You can see that the most preferred method for keyboard is using WASD, and it doesn't really matter if you use it with your left or right hand. And for the controller, the most popular is Spider Grip. This is a grip where you use your left hand to support the controller and do movement for P1, and your right thumb does all the actions for P1. Right index, middle and ring fingers are used for movement of P2, and the right pinky is doing all the actions for P2. You can use the arrow keys or numpad or any other place in the latter part of the keyboard like WASD or IJKL. The good thing about this style is that you can easily reach your triggers and bumpers on your controller. Lay your controller on the table and place your right hand on top of it. Your thumb is gonna do the movement, your index and middle fingers are on the left bumper and trigger for switching characters. Use your ring finger or pinky on the left trigger and bumper for tag and special, and 2 of the 4 classic buttons are used for jump and attack. Alternative to using opposite sticks is to remap your buttons to the left side of your controller. Instead of the 4 classic buttons, use D-pad and the left bumper and trigger. Again, this works better with the PlayStation controller. From all the mentioned styles, you can combine them as you wish, or you can come up with a new one. These were just some examples of how some of the LEGO speedrunners do 1P2C, but it doesn't mean it has to work for you. If you plan on using double keyboard, try to mirror your keybinds so that you are using the same fingers for the same actions on both hands. This can make it easier for you to get used to the keybinds. Keep in mind that doing 1P2C doesn't mean you need to have both players dropped in all the time. Don't forget to drop out in a situation where you need the other characters to follow you or where you can use the AI to help you. If you are just starting with 1P2C, don't try to do every single 1P2C in the run. Start doing the easy ones, and once you get more confidence, add more and more. Eventually you will make it to all of them. For keyboard methods, you can use other devices to make it easier for you. For example, a foot pedal. I use one myself for dropping in player 2, because my key bindings are on the right side of the keyboard and F2 is all the way on the left side, so I press the pedal with my foot to drop in P2. Don't expect amazing progress without practice. 1 or 2 hours definitely isn't enough to master 1P2C. Don't get mad because of mistakes, try to analyze why you are making them, and that will help you to improve. Keep in mind that your hands are not used to this new way of holding the controllers or keyboard. Make sure to take breaks and stretch your fingers, hands and arms so you don't hurt yourself while playing. One of the most common mistakes is mixing up your characters. This sometimes happens even to the best players, so you don't need to worry too much. I recommend having left hand control P1 and right hand P2, so it's easier for your brain to assign your hands to the characters, especially when you are playing on a fixed split screen. So that's all for this video. If I missed your 1P2C style, let me know in the comments. And if you are new to LEGO speedrunning, make sure to join our Discord servers. If you would like to check some of my speedruns of LEGO games, you can follow me on Twitch. All the links are in the description. See you!